Hi everybody, thank you for coming along. I'm going to not try to explain what the novel's about because I might be here all night kind of rambling. But basically it's about a 15-year-old girl. There's a military coup. She's taken away from her island, kind of subverted into the Keys and then onto mainland Florida, where America's having a huge kind of cultural revolution. And she also has no hands. So she ends up in a community that's made up in an old shopping mall where there's a movie theater, and she's kind of being looked after, but it's more like she's their slave. Okay. Let's see. As the first rush came into the theater, I was standing in as usher while Justin threw up in the toilet for the 10th time today. It was on usher duty that I saw a man who changed my life forever. I watched him glide through the lobby, alone, with a purposeful stride. He wore a grey raincoat and reddish-brown hair. I found it hard not to stare at his eyes as he approached me. They were the colour of a shovel when the men are digging up bodies out of the ice, frozen and sort of slushy. I also noticed that he didn't have a right thumb. In that single second, I knew that Lefty and I were meant to be. Sit in the back aisle so the sound won't hurt your left ear, I told him, as he slipped his ticket into my bag. He took one step forward, then stopped. I saw the carpet wrinkle slightly as he turned. Hey, he said, thanks. He could look at me with those slushy eyes any cold day. If only everybody could read minds, but obviously he couldn't. He kept walking towards theatre number 3. I spent the whole movie waiting for Lefty, as I'd nicknamed him, to come back out. Suddenly the doors swung open and people rushed out like a herd of pissed-off elephants. I was looking, but I couldn't see my thumbless love. And then I heard him. Come on, he said. Lefty was nowhere in sight. I hesitated. What was it that I said about not everybody being able to read minds? Aren't you coming, he asked again. I still couldn't see him, but I knew where he was from the sound of his voice. He was waiting outside. I didn't need to hesitate. Despite the line waiting at the door to be let in for the 10:15 show, I set down my ticket bag and followed the stragglers leaving Theatre 3. Where the hell do you think you're going, said Storm, the most hated manager in the history of the Cineplex. What does it look like, I told him. He shrugged. I'm chasing my dream, I'm leaving. But you can't, he said, and he looked at my hands like they were reason enough for me to stay. I say my hands, more the lack of hands, my non-hands. They were wrapped up in cotton that had come from a skirt belonging to a woman I met on my travels. You need me, he said. No, I don't, I replied and left. I shuffled my way across the dark parking lot. It was a full moon, or nearly. I knew that someone had cut off a thin sliver off the side like it was a big hunk of cheese. A man emerged from the shadow of an elm tree. It was Lefty, of course. His hair was darker outside, his face pockmarked like a teenager's. With his lopsided grin, his face was like a wonky moon. Hey, you made it, he said, moving towards me. You want to hang at mine? As we walked down the street of half-abandoned and boarded-up houses, Lefty whistling, I reflected that this was my first time outside the mall in 6 months. My existence at the movie theatre seemed like a prison sentence the further we walked, and I asked myself the question, was this the only way to live? No, Lefty said, turning his face slightly to me and smiling. He was smooth, all right. I could see why I fell for him. And then this is a little bit later when they've been sort of hanging out. A snail climbs up the table. Lefty grins as he watches it shuffle its way up the leg and cross to his machine. He starts typing. See that snail, he says to me? It's got a message. All the way from Geneva. Can you believe that? I shake my head. Lefty places a snail on a jar upside down and holds a magnifying glass to its shell. There it is. Magnified, I can see a single sheet of silver material on the snail's back. Who is Lefty? Does he just fetishize me for my lack of hands? Will he turn out to be another man who makes promises he cannot keep? The more I spend with him, the more I see him for what he is, a creep. He smiles as I think this. Later he takes me to his study and shows me books full of butterflies. Then he shows me a book that belonged to his grandfather. It's full of photos of an old man and women in gowns, close-ups of their feet. Look familiar, he asks. Of course. That's like my hands, I say as he flips pages. This technique dates over 300 years ago. One of the things my great-grandfather studied, and also my interest. I have a theory, and I want you to help me. I nod. Lefty continues, I think the loss of your hands gave you a special ability. Later that night, I fall asleep by the fire. When I wake, he's stroking my face. You're very beautiful, he says, when you sleep. He offers me cold tea, holds it to my lips. You'll have to excuse my strangeness, he said. I've been alone for too long, and I love holding women while they sleep. I love to see their innocence. I am innocent, I said. I'm only 15 years old. That's what they all say, Lefty said. Over the next few weeks, I could see I was turning into a butterfly captured in a jar to be suspended forever in amber, like the ones in Lefty.